Good morning, scholars. I wanted to review our lap book with you before you are asked to use it to take a quiz to show me what you know, what you have learned from making your lap book, and if you can successfully use all of the information in here when you're stuck. This is your resource. It's a good skill to work on, to go back and see. Look at the map if you're being asked a question about the map, or the timeline if you need to know that. So let's take a closer look at our Viking lap book, shall we? Okay, let's take a close-up look at our lap book. This is not our lap book, but it's cool to take a close-up look at it. Dragon head, sail, all of the shields lined up along the end, the back similar to the front so they could row both ways, not have to turn the ship around. All right, sail off there, and here is my lap book, all finished and complete. So now you should be going over and sharing this with your family or with your dog or your stuffed animal, or maybe you Skyped or called grandma, grandpa. You can share all of these wonderful Viking facts with them as well. There's our ship cover. I'm going to open it up. Here's what it looks like inside. So when you share, you should be doing exactly what I'm doing. Reading everything. The Vikings are known for their shipbuilding. I should read this. Their ships had flat bottoms so they could sail up on the shore. They carved serpent heads on the bow to scare their enemy. Shipbuilding. Then I go on to the next page and I share about their fighting. Vikings used the element of surprise against their enemy. Some of the weapons were spears, crossbows, swords, and shields. I can go on and flip to the next page. Sailing. Got my ship. Vikings were great sailors because they understood the weather. They could read those clouds, like what Miss Rice taught you about in science, and they knew what the different clouds meant. And they spent a lot of time at sea. So if I was asked a question about their fighting, I would know that, I bet this page might be able to answer that. Then I'm going to go on and I'm going to share my Vikings were less known for their trading, and here they are, picture of them trading, farming, there's their long house in the back we talked about, and their ironwork, their spears and broadaxes, helmets. They would often trade their ironwork when they would go on their trading adventures, maybe in search of silver. I go back up to the top here and I see my who were the Vikings. And I look at that. Vikings are Norsemen, Scandinavians. They were farmers, shipbuilders, traders, and raiders. So if someone asks you who were they, you could say, oh, they were Scandinavian from the north, the Norsemen. They believed there were many gods and goddesses and that they lived in a land above the sky called Asgard. So if someone asks you about the beliefs, you could say they believed in many gods and goddesses. Asgard was connected to the earth by a rainbow bridge. The king of the gods was Odin. Thor, the thunder god, was the most warlike of the Viking gods. So if I was asked a question and I was like, well, I don't know, then I could think, well, wait a minute. This told me about some of the gods. I wonder if my answer might be in there. Can you use this resource to help you answer your questions? So that is one reason we're getting super familiar with this, by reviewing it every day. Then we have written in stone. They wrote in runes, the runic alphabet, and I wrote my name in runes. So we know they had an alphabet, runes, called runes. If I go over here, I have my map of Scandinavia, and I look at the title, it says Map of the Vikings. And here are the Scandinavian countries: Norway, Sweden, Finland, and Denmark. We know they sailed from these different countries to go to different parts of the world. So if I was to ask you maybe what is north of Denmark, you could look on your map and go, well, north is Norway. What is to the west of Finland? Sweden and Norway. So you could use your map to answer questions. I might want to know what a different name for Vikings are. Vikings were also known as, or called, I like to say called there, barbarians. They were also called Northmen. They were also called Norsemen. So I've got 3 other names for the Vikings. Back in the day of the Viking, they probably weren't called Vikings. They were probably called Northmen or Norsemen, because the Viking word itself kind of means pirate. So they were coming in and stealing your treasure. It would be like a pirate. Then I'm going to go over and I'm going to look at my timeline. In the year 790 AD, Viking raid on Lindisfarne in England. In 860, the settlement of Iceland begins. In 941, Rus raids on Constantinople. Be the Russians. They went down up the rivers of Russia, inland. 986 AD, Eric the Red settles in Greenland. And the last thing on my timeline is Leif Erikson leads the exploration of North America, Vinland, in the year 1000 AD. So if someone wanted to know what happened in the year 860, you would go, well, I don't know. And then you would, well, wait a minute, I have a timeline, I can look. So I look for the year 860, and I would see that in 860, the settlement of Iceland begins. Or if someone asks you, what year did Eric the Red settle in Greenland? And I would look for Eric the Red settles in Greenland in the year 986 AD. So I can use this timeline to get different information. The last thing I would share is my Viking vocabulary. We made this nice vocabulary pocket. And I'm going to look through it and read over my definitions. Now I put my cards in ABC order because that's how a glossary and a dictionary is set up. So the first one is fjord. A fjord is a narrow waterway where the sea flows inland between cliffs or mountains. Next I have the game, Neffeltoffel, means the king's table, a game similar to chess. Turn that one over. Yelling, it's not a J sound, it's pronounced yelling. A location in Denmark, site of the famous Yelling runestones. So I would tell people that. A longhouse, compound word, Old Norse house with 1 room, no windows, and a grass roof. Nordic refers to the northern European countries of Scandinavia, which are Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark. Some people include Iceland in that also. And my last vocabulary word is saga. Old Norse word for story. Long story in prose, which means it had a rhythm, maybe a rhyme to it, written down in 12th century, after the Viking Age. So we can have that knowledge we have now, those great stories. So I've reviewed my vocabulary words. I'm going to stick them back in my pocket, so I will have them. I've reviewed my whole Viking lap book for the day. I'm going to go back and do that a couple more times because Mrs. Brown is going to ask us to take a quiz using the information in our lap book. Well, I hope you enjoyed making your lap book. I hope you'll use it and share the information there. Till we meet again, go forth, do great works. Farewell.